These two bad boys in the motherfucking house, y'all. This is the Fujifilm Xh2s, and this is the Sony A7 IV. It's the moment you all been waiting for, the Fujifilm Xh2s versus the winner, the Sony A7 IV. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we got these two bad boys in the house, these two heavy hitters, these two sisters from another mister, the Sony A7 IV and the Fujifilm Xh2s. Both are similar in price range, so we're going to answer the question, which one is right for you, which one is better. Before I begin, I'm just going to highlight what is important to me. So if there are any other things that I didn't talk about, it's because it's probably not important to me, or I just forgot because there's just too many things to cover. So I apologize in advance. Let's start with the build quality. So if you put this side by side, you're not going to see much of a difference in terms of the camera shell. The Sony Xh2s, I mean the Fujifilm Xh2s, looks like a Sony A7 IV for the most part. In both cameras, we got the flip out LCD screen, we got the PASM dial, but I'll actually give a point to Sony for actually having a brain and putting in a video photo toggle to switch back and forth. I find this more efficient than the Xh2s PASM custom dials, where you have 7 custom functions that you're going to have to turn all the way around. Both have a full-size HDMI port and both have very good battery life and is weather sealed respectively. The button and dials feels a bit better on the Sony A7 IV. The Xh2s buttons is too flush. It's not as responsive when pressing a button. The EVF and the LCD screen, I will give a point to the Fujifilm Xh2s. Overall, it's brighter and sharper than the Sony A7 IV. I have a better viewing experience on my Fuji. I can review my images and footage outside in the bright sunlight, something I wish I could do with the Sony A7 IV. I would say both feel good in the hands to hold and both have somewhat similar specs. The Sony A7 IV is rocking that 33 megapixel backside illuminated sensor, whereas the Fujifilm Xh2s has a stacked 26 megapixel sensor. The Sony A7 IV can film up to 4K 60, but with an APS-C crop when shooting in 4K 60. The Sony also has a dual native ISO starting at 800, and the next one up is ISO 3200, making this a capable low light video camera. The Fujifilm can shoot up to 6.2K ProRes internally, ProRes RAW and B-RAW with an external monitor. It can shoot up to 4K 120. The 4K 120 has a crop and the 4K 60 has no crop. Let's move on to autofocusing. So the Sony A7 IV has a very great autofocusing system. The autofocusing algorithm is coming from Sony's top-of-the-line camera, the Sony A1. The Fujifilm Xh2s, the S stands for speed. With that comes better autofocusing. The Xh2s has the best Fujifilm autofocusing system in the game right now. It's leaps and bounds better than any other Fujifilm camera before it. It's the real deal, so for anyone coming from the older model, this autofocusing can hang with the big boys. It can hang. It can hang. And I find that the Sony A7 IV has never fucked up when it comes to autofocusing. Photos or videos, I just find it to be super reliable. It knows what it's doing and it's really confident when it comes to their eye tracking and their face tracking. So we got the Fujifilm Xh2s here, and then we got the Sony one right here. The Sony one is gonna take a little while to focus, but once it does, it sticks on. But now we got the Sony, now we got the Fuji, and autofocusing and everything is going to be reset to when it was like right out the box. You get to see how they perform, and I'm just going to walk back and forth down the hallway and then see what it can do. Okay. Cool. All right. I I think that should be good. Let me know your thoughts on which camera does a better job at autofocusing during video. I am still unsure of the Fujifilm because it's always doesn't know what it wants to do. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. What I find with the Fujifilm Xh2s is it's really good for what I like to do, which is portraits. And I always tell my models to add some movement into the shot. And I find that it nails focus more time than it misses. It's not as good as the Sony's autofocusing though, but it's really damn close. There are certain kinks that could be ironed out in firmware updates. It's almost there, guys. It's almost there. The reason I say it's not there because the Fujifilm Xh2s as of right now is not as confident with their autofocusing when it comes to video. It's not as confident with their autofocusing like the Sony A7iv, that's for sure. It's still very sensitive. It's still very unsure about itself. I was watching Joe Allen's vlog and I kept seeing this pulse in the background and his face looked great. It was in focus, but things were happening in the background and it still kept pulsing. And I did some of my own tests and the video autofocusing is not as consistent when you're switching from a smaller lens to something with big heavy glass inside. So keep that in mind. What I like about a feature that is in the Sony A7iv when it comes to autofocusing is this touch to track feature. I can touch the back of my LCD screen and then the camera would make a box over the object that I wanted to track and it would stay locked on. And I love this feature so much. This is by far the best feature that I wish Fujifilm implemented in their Xh2 line. One way I use this feature is when I have to film B-roll for the gear that I am reviewing. Say it's a lens. What I would do is I use the touch to track and let the Sony camera do its thing while I focus on the composition and getting different types of angles without having to place something in a frame of a box like the Xh2s. The Xh2s has this area where it would focus. Anything that comes into that box will get priority when it comes to autofocusing, which is fine. I do wish that this box is a bit bigger so it can reach more surface area. Overall, I'm going to give the slight edge to Sony. The Fujifilm I find is still very unsure about itself in random scenarios, but Fujifilm is not far behind, man. So maybe if Fujifilm gets their act together and give us a couple of firmware updates to make the autofocusing less antsy and nervous, that would be great. Move on to the image quality. I would say both cameras perform excellently when it comes to image quality. Photo quality, if you want a full frame, the Sony A7iv has a full frame 33 megapixel sensor. The Xh2s is coming in at a 26 megapixel APS-C stack sensor. So if you're looking for a good stills camera, both are great. I really like both cameras for still. The full frame look is not everything, but I do appreciate that look. Every time I shoot with my Fuji and then I hop back on a Sony, I do see a difference. Again, this is an internal thing with photographers. Like, I don't think no one else cares about this shit. And I doubt any of your clients cares about this shit as well. So at the end of the day, this is like a photographer's first world problem. But I do like the Fujifilm for the colors. I may be biased because color is very subjective. I have people telling me that they prefer Sony colors before. And then I was like, what? You prefer Sony colors? The fuck? Hey guys, before we get back to our regular continued program about Fuji colors and Sony colors, I want to talk about the low light performances. Now, I usually don't care about low light performances because I've been shooting low light with an APS-C sensor for many years. It has not bothered me, but since this is a comparison video, I'm going to show you what a Fujifilm Xh2s sensor can do in low light versus the Sony A7iv. Now, I know that full frame sensor is always going to win in low light. It just because it has a bigger sensor, it can gather more light into that sensor. So I just know that it's going to do better. I just want to say that I started from ISO 800 and double it every time until we got to ISO 12,800. And to my left right here, the select, we got the Fujifilm Xh2s, the XF33mm f1.4. To the right, we got the Sony A7iv with the 50mm f1.2 G Master. I stopped down the lens to f1.4 so we can get like a balanced comparison. What we're going to do is we're just going to zoom in, look at the details, right? You can see that It's a little bit noisier already with the crop sensor compared to the Sony right here. And you can tell, and you can see that because it has the 33 megapixel that it punches in a little bit more than the 26. We're just gonna peep around, and you can already see there's some noise, and I find that it's usable. And compared to the Sony's, however, it's like very clean, and that's really good if you're looking for a camera that is good in low light. So now we switched it to ISO 1600 for both cameras. We're gonna go into the middle here. You can tell that there's some noise coming in, and we got some, I think this is some digital artifacts right here. Both are still usable. There are some artifacts coming in on the Sony, and with the Fuji, there's noise creeping in, but I still find that it doesn't look as annoying to me, in my opinion. With Fujifilm and how their sensor works is once noise is introduced, it starts to blend in and starts looking like film grain, so it looks more aesthetically pleasing to my eyes than what is going on with the Sony right here. You can see these little artifacts coming in. The Sony is starting to get blotchy up here, and I just find that the transition looks a little bit better. I don't know how much you guys can see because of the YouTube compression, but right now, to my eye, like, yes, there's more noise with Fujifilm, but I find it much more pleasing. So we're gonna keep moving on. Both shots at ISO 3200. So we're just gonna zoom in. And I do like how the Sony A7 IV looks cleaner. With Fujifilm, I find even though it's noisy, there's still like a little bit of grittiness that I don't like, or whenever I pixel peep, I do not like. You can see here in the corners, right here, it's smoother here, and then here it just seems like the transition just stops, and I don't know, it just looks really weird to me. ISO 6400, and let's see. So you can see there's a little bit more noise on the Fujifilm. But overall, this camera, they're both usable in ISO 6400. A little bit noisy. Forgive these lines, I think, because I was using the LED light sticks, it flickers, so I'm starting to get these light banding, so don't mind that. We're gonna keep it moving. I think both are usable at 6400. Let me know what you guys think. Noise here, it looks smooth here. Noisy here. There's a lot of noise pattern here. Both retain details really well. This oval right here, I think there's a little bit more detailed here than here. It starts with the Sony, I think it's starting to get mushy. I think both are usable at 6400. ISO 12800, and we're just gonna zoom in right here. And you can see there's a lot of noise. A lot of noise coming in. Again, don't mind these little lines right here. That's just because I was using my LED light stick, and I don't know what to do, and then they start having lines all over it. Right here, there's a lot more noise in the corners at ISO 12800. Again, I still think it looks fine. And in this corner, see there's a little bit more noise here, but overall, just looking at it from this angle right here, this frame right here, both are usable at 12,800. It just depends on how you use your camera and how you use available lighting to your disposal. I'm gonna say this again, the Fujifilm Xh2s does have more noise, but I still find it aesthetically pleasing, and the Sony A7 IV does have a cleaner looking image in my opinion. So both are good in low light, and I would use both cameras for low light situation. And even though there's more noise on the Fujifilm Xh2s, I am confident that the images will turn out fine, and it all depends on how tolerant you guys are with your noise in your images. But there you have it. Back to Iamtongue. But the colors are much more pleasing to my eyes, and the film simulations are these baked in looks that Fujifilm tried to emulate from old film stock. That's one thing I like about Fujifilm, and with its many selection, you can get any type of look you want, which I think is a great differentiating factor from the rest of the camera world. The video quality is where I find you're going to get more value if you go with the Fujifilm Xh2s. The Fuji can do up to 6.2K, up to 30 frames, 4K 120, and with all the crazy codec, and with the ProRes RAW and the B-RAW externally, whereas the Sony A7 IV can only do 4K 60. Both camera records great footage. I really like the footage coming out of the Sony A7 IV. However, there's no 4K 120, so if you're someone that likes to shoot a lot of slow-mo stuff, you are limited to 4K 60 with an APS-C crop. The video footage coming from both cameras are excellent though. I really like the Sony A7 IV. It gives me a nice, crispy, sharp, clean looking image. The Fujifilm is also great in video. When it's shooting 6.2K, it's doing it in open gate. This means that the camera is using its full sensor to record the video. The 6.2K will give us an aspect ratio of 3:2. And this allows us to do so many things with it. You can use its full sensor to film and get a unique retro look. What I usually do with this is I film in 6.2K, and that gives me the ability to repurpose my content for short form videos such as TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts. And it just gives me a little bit of width when I crop into a 9:16 aspect ratio. I find using a TikTok crop on a 16:9 widescreen, it always makes me look so tight, and sometimes I don't want to be that tight. Pause. So if you're a filmmaker or do more video work, I think the Fujifilm Xh2s has more pro features that will entice you to go with that instead of the Sony A7 IV. So let's talk about the user experience and lens selection, because this is also a deciding factor when it comes to choosing a system. I think the Sony A7 IV overall has a better user experience. I find that the buttons and the dials make sense to me logically. I find the Fujifilm Xh2s buttons are a mess. We have this ISO button on top, which I find is such a dumb place to put your ISO. I'm trying to make it work, but it's not fast enough. I'm always looking down because the ISO button and the record button are so close together. Sometimes without knowing, I want to change my ISO, but then by accident, I press record, and it's going to take me time to stop the recording, and I have to look down, and for some reason that's just too much time already. If I constantly keep looking down and wasting seconds, those seconds adds up. I'll go to somewhere that has a better user experience, and right now I find that to be in the Sony A7 IV. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to get used to it. If you do get the Xh2s, you're most likely are going to have to adapt to the quirky parameters that Fujifilm has set. There are certain things that they do backwards, and I mentioned that on my Fujifilm Xh2s review. So if you want to go check out its quirkiness, go check out that video. I'll leave a link to it in my description or somewhere right here. If you're a filmmaker, these things really don't matter much to you. Like if you're working on set and you have to wait around like to set up the lights and set up the shot, this won't mean as much to you, as you're probably going to take your time setting up the camera as well, and setting up the shots and setting up everything else. And if you're deciding to get into a camera's ecosystem, you're going to have to think about the lens options and selections out there. I find that the Sony E-mount has diverse lens selections to choose from. You have the third-party lenses that works very well with the Sony, and sometimes it's cheaper than a Fujifilm native lens. I find that the Fujifilm's lens selections to be very limiting, and these lenses they have are made for stills. I don't trust Fujifilm lenses for videos unless they're like the newer ones that came out like in the past couple of years. So finding a good autofocusing lens for Fujifilm is going to be hard. It's time we hold Fujifilm to a higher standard. There needs to be more video-centric lenses out there. I find that the Sony lenses, a lot of their lenses have very good autofocusing for video. They're smooth, they don't jump around like the Fujis. However, Fujifilm has finally let third-party lenses come in and create lenses for the Fujifilm X mount. But there's not a lot on the market right now that has good autofocusing. So Sony wins in the user experience and in the lens selection department. Their lens lineup is matured already, and I just love how the third-party full-frame lenses out there are sometimes cheaper than the Fujifilm native lenses, and these third-party full-frame lenses performs like they are a native lens but at a fraction of a price, which is fucking amazing. So is there a clear winner in this? I think it's honestly the Fujifilm. On paper, it looks like the Fujifilm Xh2s with its specs will come out on top. If you're a filmmaker, videographer, and you need a good video camera, the Xh2s is it. The Xh2s does have 26 megapixel, and with its 40 frames per second in burst, it is a very capable action camera, which is something that the Sony A7 is lacking. The stack sensor from the Fuji makes it really good against a rolling shutter. The Sony has poor rolling shutter. But the Sony A7 IV is no slouch itself. It has great video capabilities, not to the level of the Xh2s, but it's still good. It has great photo quality as well. It also has a full frame camera. Is full frame everything? It's not, but it's important to some people. The full frame look is very nice to look at in my opinion, but clients aren't going to be able to tell a difference, so that doesn't really matter. It only matters to photographers. I also think what's great about the Sony system is its lens choices. The Sony has so many lens options out there, third-party lenses with good autofocusing performances and great image quality at a fraction of some of the native Sony lenses too. This is what I think is going to drive more people to Sony. I love Fuji glass, but I don't find them to be very good at autofocusing for videos. The photography aspect, they're great. They kill it, and with the Xh2s stack sensor, that thing nails more shots in focus than autofocus. However, if you're a solo filmmaker, I don't find that the Fujifilm autofocusing as reliable as the Sony's for video, and there are not many third-party options out there with autofocusing just yet. It's coming, and it's coming painfully slow, especially with lenses that a video shooter would need, like a fast zoom. Sigma? Tamron? Like, get on it right now. But if you only use manual focusing, sure, go ahead and pick the Fuji because it has a lot of good features. So I'm going to leave this up to you guys. What are your thoughts? Do we have a clear winner in this? Can you live with the lack of lens options there are for the Fujifilm X mount in order to use all the beastly specs that the Xh2s has to offer? Or would you rather pick the Sony but have access to all the Sony E-mount lenses out there from Sony and third-party brands like Sigma, Tamron, and etc. Let me know it down in the comment section below. If you guys are interested in these cameras, I'm going to leave a link to them down below, and don't forget to follow me on all my socials at Iamtongue. That's where you're going to see a lot more of my work. That is it for me, guys. Hope you guys enjoy this one. This one is a very long one to make, but I had fun making this. Once again, my name is Tongue, and I'll see you in the next video. I love you.